Good evening and welcome to Civonix. Tonight is January 12, 2026, and we begin with a developing global story that continues to dominate headlines. Rising tensions between the United States and Iran unfolding alongside massive unrest inside Iran. Iran nationwide protests have now entered weeks of confrontation between demonstrators and security forces. Reports from human rights groups suggest hundreds have been killed and thousands detained since demonstrations began. What started as economic frustration has now turned into a wider challenge to government authority. Security forces remain deployed across major cities, while internet access and mobile communication continue to be restricted, limiting the flow of independent information. The United States has reacted strongly to these developments. President Donald Trump publicly condemned the Iranian government response to protesters, stating that the world is watching closely. Trump said Washington is aware of diplomatic signals coming from Tehran, but warned that continued violence could force stronger action. American officials have criticized internet shutdowns, calling them a violation of free expression and transparency. Iranian leadership has rejected foreign criticism and instead accused outside powers of fueling unrest. Government officials described the protests as attempts to destabilize the nation. Iran parliament members warned that any direct U.S. intervention would be met with retaliation, including threats to American and allied interests across the region. International reactions remain divided. Several European nations condemned the use of force against civilians, while others urged restraint and dialogue. China has called for non-interference, emphasizing regional stability. United Nations officials stressed the importance of human rights and warned against escalation. The unrest has also spread beyond Iran, with demonstrations held by Iranian communities abroad. In the United States, protests in major cities drew attention to the crisis and highlighted how deeply events inside Iran resonate internationally. Protest organizers inside Iran say the movement is no longer about economic pressure alone, but about deeper demands for reform. Activists argue that citizens are pushing back against decades of restrictions, while rights groups warn that the true death toll may be higher due to limited reporting. The U.S. continues its maximum pressure strategy through sanctions aimed at restricting Iran's economic and military capabilities. Sanctions have heavily impacted oil exports and overall economic stability. Supporters argue the pressure limits Tehran influence, while critics say it worsens civilian suffering. Iran's nuclear program has returned to the center of global concern. Tehran insists it will not accept restrictions on uranium enrichment unless sanctions are lifted. Western officials say nuclear escalation would further isolate Iran and increase regional risk. President Trump has not ruled out military options if the situation escalates. Defense analysts caution that any strike could trigger broader conflict, including retaliation through proxy groups across the Middle East. Neighboring countries in the Gulf remain on high alert. Israel continues to closely monitor developments, warning that instability in Iran could lead to unpredictable consequences across the region. Global markets have responded cautiously. Oil prices show volatility as investors assess the risk of supply disruption. Analysts say political instability in the region historically affects energy markets worldwide. Humanitarian organizations are increasingly concerned about civilian safety. Internet shutdowns and restricted media access make it difficult to verify casualties and conditions on the ground. Calls for independent monitoring continue to grow. In the United States, public opinion is divided. Some Americans support strong measures against Iran, while others fear military escalation could lead to another prolonged conflict. Polls suggest uncertainty over the best path forward. Diplomats continue to argue that dialogue remains essential despite rising rhetoric. Analysts believe Iran's internal pressure could eventually push leaders toward negotiations, though no clear timeline exists. Military experts warn that while full-scale war is not imminent, the risk of miscalculation remains high.
Incidents at sea, cyber operations, or proxy clashes could quickly spiral. Human rights groups continued to urge international action, emphasizing accountability and protection for civilians. They warned silence could encourage further repression. Iran's use of digital blackouts highlights the modern role of technology in political control. Restricting communication may limit protests, but also fuels global criticism. U.S. forces stationed across the region remain on alert. Officials say these deployments are defensive and meant to deter escalation while keeping diplomatic channels open. Iran parliament leaders have issued direct warnings, saying any attack would trigger retaliation against U.S. and allied targets, increasing the stakes of every decision. As January 12th comes to a close, no single event defines the day, but the overall direction is clear. Tensions are rising, uncertainty remains, and the consequences will unfold over time. We will continue to monitor every development closely, bringing verified updates and clear analysis. This is Civonix, Clear News, Real America.